Les, tonight I'm in Nantucket, trying to raise money for Mass Metal. I'd much rather be here with you. I wish I'd taken Susan's advice, flown in by a light seaplane, landed on the Charles, and jogged over here just in time for supper. But alas, I have to talk by television. Les, let me reassure you. I've come to Broil Havens not to praise him. God forbid that I or anybody tonight should express appreciation or affection. In 1960, I was one of your early residents. You just finished being chief on Fable Service 1. And for me, you were quite the most impressive figure at the Psycho. You were the one that read my papers. You were the one that taught me the most. You see, there were 25 residents that year, and 5 of us were exiled down to the day hospital. Dan Bowie, Irv Taubey, and I. The other 20, they were up on services 1, 2, or 3. They saw really sick inpatients. They had Ewald and Semerad. We down in the day hospital, we had to get along with you. The day hospital, it must have been John Mack's first extraordinary invention. It was perhaps the first day hospital in New England, and he'd founded it just before he went off to the Air Force in Japan. What were you like in those days, Les? Do you remember? Every resident had to write you an admitting note within 24 hours of their patient coming to the hospital. But it wasn't just an ordinary biopsychosocial, lexical, left brain, DSM-4 admitting note. We had to write you sonnets, not just Freud, but Chekhov, Shakespeare, Conrad. We'd send you the notes and you'd send us back carbon copies, edited, criticized. And you didn't change. 15 years later, I brought you the first chapters of Adaptation to Life. I was expecting your criticism, but of course hoping for your approval too, but not a chance. Your response was, George, these characters seem kind of flat. You know, it's possible to make vignettes come alive. George, have you read Solzhenitsyn? In those early days, you were modeling for us how to be a psychiatrist for all seasons. You wrote papers on ECT. You were a candidate at the Institute. You were Volpe's first choice for Commissioner of Health. You asked yourself to be the master of every model of the mind. But what was nice was that you took us along with you. In those days, Dan Levinson and Mickey Sheriff were trying to study what made young psychiatrists tick. And they finally brought their results to grand rounds. I forget whether it was Mickey or Dan who gave the paper, but I remember the title, The Quest for Omniscience. At the end, you left white-faced. Somehow they touched a chord. But what was your pain was our gain. Because in your quest for omniscience, you always did it in a generative way. You always took us along too. You tried to inspire and include. And your biggest fear in those days was that you might give too much of yourself away. But we just took it and ran and have benefited from it. And you finally limited your focus. You wrote and taught about how to make contact, how to reach patients the way you'd already learned how to reach residents. And you understood you didn't reach people through their lexical left brains. You reached them through the temporal lobe, and it took rhetoric to do it. You understood how to reach patients, how to make contact, the way a trial lawyer might make contact with a jury. Left brain be damned. Go for the affect. Go for the temporal lobe. I remember the day you left Mass Metal for Cambridge. The air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The residents were miserable. Rick Shelton, a Mass Metal star in those days, muttered that Cambridge had gotten you in an even player swap for Valliant. He was not pleased. Mass Metal had been had. "15 years ago, the residents gave you a chair to say goodbye. On the back of it, it had a plaque, and on the stage you read the plaque and looked as if someone had just made you eat a lemon. I was sitting next to Susan and I said, 'Susan, what do you think it says?' Susan didn't miss a beat. She said, 'I bet it says, Les, we love you.' She was right. God forbid, Les, God forbid, that this evening you should notice that the residents in the audience love you. And worse than that, Les, not only are you going to have to take it in, but you're going to have to realize you've got nobody to blame but yourself. God bless you."